Well, shit. I didn't plan on making a video this soon, but there is a lot of MMO news that I thought we should cover. Honestly, I did not think that we'd be getting such a big drop of MMO news just to end out the year. I can't say I was expecting some of this especially. In fact, the biggest surprise of all this news that came out isn't actually that WoW is getting housing. It's coming from NCSoft, and what they actually, I guess, just kind of really confirmed is coming next year. Two freaking MMOs next year. And one of them, well, I think a lot of people will be excited about it. And that's a weird state of affairs given how much trouble NCSoft has been in lately. But let's start with the big ass headline. WoW housing, the roadmap, and WoW Classic 2.0. We got two pretty big surprise announcements from Blizzard about World of Warcraft. That is the current live version of World of Warcraft. And then the most immediate thing, the big surprise, is that WoW Classic is getting a refresh, a 20th anniversary edition, a fresh start launch that will go live on November 21st of 2024, giving you essentially no time to request off for that. But you know, you could call in sick. Not that I would suggest that, but yes, fuck work. There will be 3 realms: PvE, PvP, and a hardcore rule set. Hardcore rule set being the setting where you can set a bet with your friend that you will absolutely be higher level than them because they've never played an MMO before, and then lose to them and feel shitty about it for months because you died on a paladin. Not bitter, but they did use a warlock, okay? Now, while the timing is surprising, what really isn't is that they're doing this. Everquest has been doing this for well over a decade at this point. You let a server run its course and then you start over. And they're even leaning more into the whole progression part of it, because we already know that these servers within a year will be moving on to Burning Crusade. They're WoW Classic, but if you played Everquest, they're just progression servers at this point. These are the early days of Everquest progression servers. And while nothing beyond Burning Crusade has been confirmed yet, I think it's safe to assume that it will continue on because they've already done it once before. But other than that, the servers are going to be pretty similar. They'll have a LFG tool, but the read on that sounds like it's just a standard, oh, these people are LFG type of tool, not like the port yourself to a dungeon where people don't talk to you tool. They'll also maintain force balancing on PvP factions to keep it somewhat even. So if you've been waiting to restart in WoW Classic or try it for the first time, here's your chance. But if you're a bigger fan of the live game, well, there were some big things, I guess. Never one to let a good idea go untouched, World of Warcraft is finally adding what Ultima Online did in 1997. Housing. I guess for Blizzard to adapt something to their game, they really just need to wait for Guild Wars 2 to do it first, and then they're good to go. Jokes aside, I'm not actually sure about this, believe it or not. WoW has kind of tried this sort of before with garrisons, and that flopped pretty hard. Few people really cared for them, especially once Blizzard kind of abandoned them. It just felt like some meaningless thing. Adding housing can be a huge boon. I mean, it's got its own subculture in MMOs that have had it from the start, like Ultima Online, Everquest 2, and Final Fantasy XIV. And I personally can't wait until they add the stable edition that will cost you $120 so you can put your $90 auction house mat in there. Fuck, now they're gonna do that, aren't they? WoW has tried over the years to add more reasons to engage with the game beyond end game rating. Their Pokemon Pet Battler has gone in and out of fashion, largely around how much experience it grants. Garrisons, Dragonflight Racing. They obviously have more than enough money to develop and make all these systems. I just wish they'd give them a bit more love and attention after they launch, and as they do before. But in the end, World of Warcraft knows where the player base is. They're out there grinding arena ranks and mythics. So I think the success or failure of housing largely depends on if Blizzard gives a shit or not. And by extension, if the players will. Will they feel incentivized to? Will they find enjoyment in it? We'll just have to wait and see, but at least they're adding something new, right? Now this next pixel, we're going to talk about some new releases and some early access, but I've actually got a bigger video on some of this, so I'll kind of keep it brief. Pantheon Rise of the Fallen is entering early access for testing purposes on December 13th, 2024. It will cost $39.99 and will be available on Steam. It will have no sub feed, just the initial box price, and they're hoping to be an EA for 2 years before 1.0, at which point they will assess how they want to monetize going forward, and they'll be listening to player feedback. But this is a copy of the game, so at least you have that. Ashes Alpha 2 is officially open on the weekends now. Reviews I've been seeing here are honestly kind of what I was expecting. Die-hard fans of the game have been absolutely loving it, while those who have been more riding its hype than its substance have been a bit disappointed to find out that it is in fact an alpha, and it is a PvP-oriented game. I'll do my own first impressions at a later date, but so far I'm kind of mixed. But that was kind of to be expected because this isn't exactly the game being built for me. But at the very least, Ashes Creation is now widely available with no NDA, meaning you get to see everything going on, and if you have about $100, you can play with their whole tiering Alpha 2 package, which it's kind of confusing, but there are ways to play, essentially. Core Punk, on the other hand, has been pretty silent, which is, I'm not gonna lie, a little bit concerning given that they have an early access release date coming up on November 26th of 2024. If all things go well, I'll be jumping in at some point before the end of the year just to see how things are shaping up, what they've changed and what they've kept the same. You also got a new Lord of the Rings Online expansion that just launched on November 6th called Legacy of Morgoth. But we won't get too much into this here because we'll talk a bit more about Lord of the Rings Online in just a moment when we talk about the financial info we just got. Everquest and Everquest 2 will be launching their expansions in December, as they always do, while they recently released random loot progression server in Everquest, and the classic non-pay-to-win, more hardcore Everquest 2 Origin server continue to chug along. To say it's been a big year for Everquest might be a bit of an understatement, but that doesn't mean we got the information that I was really craving and hoping for, unfortunately, when it came to the financials, which again we'll get to in just a sec. But first, before we go into that, I want to commend Daybreak and all the people that were part of the Extra Life initiative this year, because they kind of did an amazing thing. Extra Life is a gaming-focused charity for children's hospitals, and each year Daybreak has incentivized players to donate by dangling tantalizing bonuses to players, like a massive 200% bonus experience and drops in a game where those things are very important. And guess what? It fucking works. As of this video, Daybreak has raised just shy of $200,000 for the Extra Life charity, doubling their goal of over $100,000 to what they had set. And as you can see on screen, these are some of the creators that put forth their effort to get people to donate to the Extra Life cause. This happens every single year, and it's something that's just, it's a really commendable thing that they do, and I really just kind of wanted to highlight this because it's just kind of a sweet, wonderful thing to, just, you know, some good fucking news. Why am I'm cussing a lot in this one? This is gonna be a lot of censoring. But fuck, if there aren't some surprises in the financials, especially around NCSoft. So we're basically wrapping up financial quarters, which basically means all these companies that are publicly traded are putting out all this information to try and make their investors feel good about themselves as they go sleep on their pile of cash. So we actually got some interesting stuff on NCSoft. But first, to catch people up on NCSoft, it's kind of been spiraling lately. They've canceled some games, they've laid off a lot of employees, and they've been trying to defend themselves against a bunch of angry investors who don't give a shit if you like their game, only if you open their wallet. It's all still pretty bad, even in this quarter. Lots of declines across the board, and it even looks like Guild Wars 2, which wasn't mentioned before, actually struggled this quarter, perhaps in part due to just how packed expansions were this year. Going up against expansions for Final Fantasy XIV and World of Warcraft is always going to be rough. But I'm not here to rehash the decline of NCSoft's mobile revenue. What I want to talk about is what this seems to be a theme for NCSoft. Shit is getting bad for us, but here's a tease of a sequel that you really wanted. This time though, it's not Guild Wars 3. NCSoft is targeting, in 2025, for Aion 2. This next part is a quote, but just keep in mind that it is translated, so take that as you will. For next year, we are expecting to have 5 releases, which includes our most expected titles, including Aion 2, Project Triple L, and Tacton. That's 2 MMOs. Project Triple L was announced a while back and seems to be on track for their release. There's no telling if the FPS MMO will hit or how it will be monetized, but it's definitely one I'll be keeping an eye on since it's an unoccupied space in the genre. Please don't over monetize it. I know I'm saying that to NCSoft, but please don't. Just make it fair. Aion 2, on the other hand, will apparently target a global market, but will take a completely different approach from Throne and Liberty, which I can only hope means it won't be overly enhancement based, randomized monetization, etc. And from the massively OP article on this, that seems like that actually might be the case, at least in part, as it'll be a different in strategy in game design, content, combat, monetization scheme, and marketing, and that it will focus on progression and co-op play rather than competitive play. I think in general, when it comes to monetization, and this I think was, at least for me, one of my biggest issues with Throne and Liberty, is when you combine kind of a predatory monetization model, like, hey, let's disable peer-to-peer trading so that you have to buy things from other players using RMT. Because when you do stuff like that, and then on top of it, you throw on this competitive part of it, like Diablo Immortal did with how they decided to monetize, you're basically really doubling and tripling down on the incentive to pay money just to be able to play the game. And if you do it more co-op, it might not be as bad. And I say that it's probably going to be awful, but you know what? We can hope for now until proven wrong. Moving on, they go on to say something kind of interesting, that they want to use their core MMO IPs for new genre games, which I'm not entirely sure what that means, but I hope it's not just more mobile, because they've already been doing that, especially with Lineage. And honestly, it has done well for them in the past, and right now, it is the source of a lot of their issues, is the over-reliance on mobile. And this, I think, is actually smart, because I think there's some inherent benefit in expanding your IP when you're an MMO. Everquest, back when the game was more popular, expanded into the RTS genre and the ARPG genre. The RTS kind of flopped, but the ARPGs became cult classics. And of course, World of Warcraft had a built-in audience from their RTS games. Games that they also just announced are all getting remastered. Warcraft 1, Warcraft 2, and technically Warcraft 3 Reforged is getting a 2.0, trying to fix a lot of the things that people were mad about at the original release. You can build IP awareness through more bingeable genres, if that's what they plan. But they've also mentioned, unfortunately, that they've shut down 6 projects. And given the silence on Project E, I have to wonder if that was one of them. That is the companion game to Throne and Liberty. Whatever the case, it sucks to see all these layoffs, really no matter what. EG7, the owner of Daybreak Games, which operates the Everquest titles Lord of the Rings Online, DCUO, PlanetSide, and now Palia, is having kind of the opposite fortunes of NCSoft, or at least they're saying they are, though it's still been a rough from 2023 to 2024. There's a lot in here about some of EG7's other titles like MechWarrior 5 Clans, which is apparently doing well, but I want to talk specifically about their MMOs that are apparently also doing pretty darn well. Daybreak has had a nice quarter, and that's before the end of the year bump they will usually get from expansion releases to their core MMOs in Lord of the Rings Online, Everquest, and Everquest 2. And a lot of this seems to be because of all the anniversary events going on at Everquest and the legendary servers for Lord of the Rings Online having apparently done very well, and it sounds like they will continue to be a factor going forward, especially the legendary servers for Lord of the Rings Online. Everquest and Lord of the Rings Online's strong performance is highlighted for Daybreak's successes this quarter, but despite that, most of the airtime beyond MechWarrior 5 was spent on Palia, which makes sense because they just kind of bought it. Going as far as to describe Palia as a genre-defining game, even looking forward to getting the game on more consoles in 2025. It also sounds like since they purchased Palia, it's been positive to their net revenue. It sounds like they even plan to finally launch the game into 1.0 in 2025. But that brings us to my biggest disappointment from these financials. No EverQuest 3. Not even something that I can overreact to. There's nothing. Nada. Not zilch. Just nothing there. Back when we learned of EverQuest 3, it was mentioned that development would potentially begin in 2025. That's 2 months away. Less than that. We got confirmations this year from Daybreak during panels that the game was hiring and it was currently under ideation. But not seeing it in the looking forward, even as something like unnamed Daybreak title or something else, has been pretty disappointing, especially when they've been basically saying that for the Cold Iron title, which they simply mention as new title from Cold Iron based on major motion picture franchise IP. We'll get one more of these financial drops in 2024. Well, technically in 2025, but for 2024. And it's this section right here, the investment section, where I'll personally be looking for any sign of movement on EverQuest 3 to make me feel confident that this project is still at least top of mind for them and they haven't kind of pulled back, because we do have to remember that there was also another project that was top of mind for this company, which was the remaster of Lord of the Rings Online, which was eventually found to be not worth it monetarily for them. So what I really want to see to feel a little bit confident, have a little bit the same confidence I had when EverQuest 3 was first announced, or not really announced, but first leaked, that just give me something to know that this game is still being worked on and it's actually progressing. But in the meantime, if you're looking for something else to play, you can find a bunch of different MMOs over here. And honestly, most of them that you can play this year, they're not actually full 1.0s, but they still could be a lot of fun. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Please be sure to vote in the Scuffed Game Awards as well. Link will be right down there below.